This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross this time-space continuum. This place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, Digital Satellite Network, across Europe and Asia on Euro Radio TV and Radio X, and of course on iHeartRadio. If you'd like to send me an email, it's very simple, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And to find out about the programming we have available for you, 724, 365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. My guest this hour is John Greenwald, and he is the gentleman behind The Black Vault. The website, www.theblackvault.com. And John, welcome to the X-Zone.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
John, tell us a little bit about yourself and what the inspiration was for you to get into the work that you do, amassing millions of pieces of information about UFOs and everything else.
Yeah, I started now over 20 years ago, which is, I can't believe that it's been that long. I was 15 years old at the time, and, you know, it was before even Google was an actual search engine, really. I mean, you know, Googling wasn't a thing, and I remember it was Alta Vista was the search engine, and I searched for UFOs. And even back then, you would get hundreds of thousands. Now it's, you know, tens of millions. But at the time, this was 1996, you know, hundreds of thousands of websites on UFOs. And I was just a teenager, and I never thought that I would get into this full time. Mm-hmm. And I started looking into some of the stories, and you just kind of see the same rehash, and even to this day, but you see the same rehash of this story and that story. Yeah. But what really intrigued me was the government aspect. And I kind of made what I call the worst decision of my life, but I ended up determining that it was the best decision of my life. And that was thinking to myself at the age of 15 that if I wanted the truth, the United States government would be the one to give it to me. And now I was 15 and naive at the time. I really thought that that was true. And I started going after government documents, thinking again that, well, this is irrefutable. Mm-hmm. And I quickly learned, well, they're going to lie through their teeth as well. But that was pretty powerful evidence to show that there was a cover-up going on. And as the months and years ticked on, it was very provable that the UFO phenomena was a real thing, that this wasn't something that was as easily explainable. And since then, like you said, I've amassed about 1.6 million pages of government documents, not all on UFOs. I deal with pretty much every government secrecy or every government secret that you can imagine. But UFOs has always been the most popular and to be honest with you, the most intriguing to me. I think that that's probably my favorite of all the government secrets that are out there.
John, how does FOIA work?
FOIA is pretty simple to the root of what the law is, and that is it allows any person anywhere on the planet, you can be in Canada, the United States, Great Britain, doesn't matter, to access information from the U.S. government. Plain and simple, you just have to ask for it. Now, there's a form letter, essentially, that you can follow, but really what you have to do is figure out what is the best agency to go to that might have the information that you want. That's kind of the trick. I mean, you really have to figure out what will be the right office. Because if you ask for something from the FBI, but it's a CIA project, you'll probably come up with no records, and you think, well, the government doesn't have anything. You just essentially have to go to the right place. And that's kind of the hardest part. You send off your letter. The biggest kind of, I would say, frustration is the waiting game, and that is kind of the toughest parts. Some agencies take months, others take years. In one case, I waited over 15 years for a document to come. I've only been doing this for 20. Imagine 3/4 of the time that I've been doing this, I was waiting for one single document. So although the process works, and I'm a big fan of it, an advocate for anybody out there who wants to try it, it does involve a lot of patience.
John Greenwald is our guest, Exo Nation, www.theblackvault.com. And, wow, 15 years waiting for something to come back from the government. Why does that surprise me? Sounds like Canada. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Check out his website, www.theblackvault.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation, John Greenwald is our special guest this hour. He is the gentleman behind the Black Vault. The website is www.theblackvault.com. John, what is the UFO government connection?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. When you start looking into this field and this phenomena, the government wants you to believe that there is none, that there's no connection whatsoever. But the documentation, the actual evidence, if you take the time to look at it, tells a completely different story. And, now the big question is, it's provable that there's a cover-up. I think that that's easy. When you look at the government documents and you see that there's not 1 or 2 or 10 or 20, there are literally thousands and thousands of pages on the UFO phenomena that are still classified. That's the key here. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can read and, not necessarily classified. That's not the interesting stuff. The point is that whatever this phenomena is, it is, by the government's own explanation, the reason why it's blacked out, if they gave it to you, it is a threat to national security. So what then about the UFO phenomena is a threat to national security? And that's the part that makes your question very tough to answer, because although there is a connection, what is it? There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that the government is in collusion with aliens, and there's top secret testing in the northern New Mexico and an underground base, and there's all sorts of crazy stories out there, but we don't know what the reality is. I personally, my feeling behind all of this, the cover-up is not necessarily that there's some collusion. I believe the cover-up is there by the U.S. government because they just don't know. They don't have an answer. And if you follow anything related to the U.S. government, you quickly realize that they want to be the number one of everything. They want to be the smartest. They want to be the most heavily armed. They want to be the most technologically advanced. They want to be number one in everything.
And we're talking about a government that can't even pass a health bill.
Right, and there's a lot of things that the government can't do. They can't deliver mail and make it profitable. I mean, there's a lot of silly things that the government can't do, and yet this is the biggest unanswered question that, in my opinion, humanity has yet to answer, and that is, are we alone in the universe?
Is it possible, John, that the UFO that is written about or identified in these government papers is actually just an unidentified flying object? It doesn't mean that it's from outer space, but could it be a flying object that was from this planet that just hasn't been identified yet?
Yeah, that's a great point. Of course, UFO does not necessarily equal alien in every instance. So what I've done over the years, and I do this when I do public lectures, is you go through every possible non-alien skeptical way to look at the UFO phenomena. And when you take this list of everything that you can think of what these UFOs can be, when you look at the government documents, those that you can read, none of them match up. They just don't. There's documentation to show and prove that this is an intelligent phenomena. This is something that the U.S. government cannot explain. This is not a top secret military aircraft. Could it potentially be that when somebody in the middle of Nebraska or some other state sees something? Absolutely. That's potentially an explanation. But when the U.S. government and U.S. military itself says that there is no explanation and it is truly unidentified, that kind of leaves only one thing on that skeptical list. And again, that is connecting to the extraterrestrial phenomena.
But if other countries were able to hack into the U.S. government files and, get lists of employees and so on, and possibly even affect the election, why wouldn't they take the opportunity of exposing one of the biggest controversies in the United States these days and find the proof that extraterrestrials have been here and that the United States government is lying to the people?
Well, yeah, that is a big question, and arguably there have been quote-unquote hacked material that's come out from the government by people. I mean, you've got Gary McKinnon and the story behind him hacking into NASA saying that there's proof of alien life and, a whole secret string of astronauts that are, flying around that we don't know about. That's out there, and that's very controversial, but it's there. But it also, I think it makes this field very hard to kind of conquer. There's when you have those types of rumored leaked documents and you can't verify it, they sound great and they read great, but you really don't know what the truth is.
Right.
So to kind of answer your question, it is out there. It's just really controversial, and you can never prove it. You can never say without a doubt that what Gary McKinnon had seen and what he's talked about is real. It just doesn't. It just doesn't become verifiable very easily.
In a world where there's so much to worry about, for example, you've got the political situation, you have the weather, you've got the unemployment, you've got the healthcare fiasco that's going on, and when you look at the world, you have terrorism, war, famine. Why do you think that so many people really don't care about UFOs? That it's just those who are, within the community itself?
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing, that I think a lot of people don't care about these big questions, that they don't care about answering, is the UFO phenomena extraterrestrial or not? We just don't know. I don't think people look up anymore. They're looking down. I think they're looking at their cell phones. They're becoming a world of zombies, and it's unfortunate. It's sad because people don't take it seriously, and they should. Now, what doesn't help is the media. What doesn't help are these, jokes when somebody finally does, ask a question or say something on television. It's always followed by a joke. It's always something that, is kind of ridiculed by the public, and I think that people latch onto that, and when they finally hear a real story about the UFO phenomena or the potential that it's connected to aliens, they laugh it off because that's what they're used to.
But on the same strain, John, when you've got directors of MUFON coming out and saying that Malaysian Airline Flight 370 will never be found because it was abducted by aliens. And they issue a press release to this extent. You can't blame the media for not taking a lot of these people serious.
Yeah, you don't have any argument from me. I think that a lot of those types of theories and a lot of those types of stories are very unfortunate in this field, because a lot of people will say something like that, or make a claim, or write a press release, or say something with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And one of the ways that I term it is, it's called the hunt for virality. And ultimately, here in the 21st century, in the world of social networking, everybody wants that next viral story. They want that next picture, that next video. They want that next post to get 3 million shares and 5,000 likes an hour and this and that. And I think that that's what we're seeing the majority of the time. The more extraordinary the claim, the more widespread the claim goes. And I think that again, that hunt for virality, people are latching onto that and go, well, if Malaysian Airlines, went down because of an equipment malfunction, no one really cares except the families of those that went down. But if you say that it was abducted by aliens, all of a sudden, people are sharing it and liking it and so on. But it is laughable when you really kind of look at it from a serious standpoint. And it's really unfortunate. So you got no argument from me. There's a lot of people out there that are not helping this field, and by putting stories out there like that and taking it seriously with zero evidence whatsoever, that does not help the situation at all.
John, did the U.S. government military really stop investigating UFOs?
Well, that's what they want you to believe. But again, this is another instance where if you look at the documentation, if you look at the evidence and what they will freely give you, again, not hacked information, not speculation, not conspiracy theory, the documentation that they will give you proves that they have been collecting UFO records and reports. They want you to believe from 1947 to 1969, they did their investigation.
Project Blue Book.
Is Project Sign, Project Grudge, and ultimately Project Blue Book is what we all know it by. And this was their investigation. They did over 12,000 UFO investigations, or so they say. And when it was all said and done, after those 22 some odd years, only 701 of them remained truly unidentified. Now, the reason why they remained unidentified, this small number in the grander scale and scheme of things, was that it just simply was a lack of evidence, that the information wasn't there to properly identify it. But they felt strongly that those 701 could be identified if the evidence was there. It just lacked the appropriate evidence. So ultimately, they were saying the phenomena was a waste of time, a waste of money, and in 1969, the beginning of 1970, it was completely shut down. But the documentation shows something different. When you look at the CIA, when you look at the NSA, when you look at the DIA, when you look at all these three-letter, acronym agencies, all of them had UFO records that went and stretched far beyond that 1969 cutoff date. And the most heavily classified UFO documents, the ones that were coming up in my requests when I was asking for UFOs, that's how we know that they're UFO records, they are the most heavily classified later as time goes on. So the farther you get away from 1969, the more classified the information is. So why is that? That should be kind of the opposite, that if in 1969 they determined the phenomena was easily explainable, then as time goes on, they can say, yeah, we got a phone call about this UFO, but we just believe it to be a weather balloon, and here's the documentation, nothing blacked out. That would make more sense, but it's quite the opposite. And these UFO records, many of which are classified top secret, they have top secret stamps, many of which are blacked out from top to bottom, if they give them to you at all. Sometimes they just say, well, we're not even going to, black it out. There's too much top secret information. So why is that? What is so classified about this information and this phenomena that they cannot tell us? So the public company line that they love to tell us about 1969, that is a lie, and it's a provable lie all the way up until today. I even found a United States Air Force manual. It was labeled 10-206. That same agency that headed that Project Blue Book investigation, they had a manual on the books up until about 2 or 3 years ago that specifically talked about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and how to report them. And interestingly enough, it was your government, the Canadian government, that actually was the one that gave it to me when the United States Air Force at the NORAD installation, this was the end that actually received these UFO reports, at least according to this manual. NORAD said, we have nothing at our location. We have not collected a single UFO report. So the kind of the twist to this story is NORAD is not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. They did this search for records of what they call in good faith. So they were just saying, we're not subject to the FOIA, but we'll go ahead and search anyway, and we found nothing. And the reason why they're not subject to the FOIA is because they're under the control of United States and Canada. And so they call that a binational command. Righty. So then U.S. law doesn't apply.
John, stand by. We've got to take our break. Please stand by. Exonation John Greenwald is our guest. www.theblackvault.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Exonation John Greenwald is our special guest. He is the gentleman behind the Black Vault. The website is www.theblackvault.com. Let me ask you something, John. We were talking about computer hacking before, and there's a lot of modern technology out there. Everybody has a cell phone that has a high-definition camera in it. Isn't it ironic that ever since there are more cameras out there, there are less photos being taken of UFOs?
Well, yes. And that is a big skeptical argument with what's out there, meaning everybody's got a camera on their hip. Mm-hmm. Why don't we have more footage, better footage, and so on? You know, I try and be fair, and I could compare it to a car accident. And, you know, you're walking down the street and you see a car accident. It happens very quickly. And you generally, you know, are not going to capture that very quick act as it happens. You may capture the aftermath, but you're not going to, you know, capture it as it happens. Mm-hmm. UFO sightings generally don't last for an hour. Yes, some sightings do, and yes, you kind of want to strangle a witness when they say, I watched it for 30 minutes, and wow, I don't have a photo or a video, but it was amazing, and you want to strangle them.
Sure.
But in fairness, you know, you don't know unless you're in the moment, and I've never been in that moment, so I don't know how I'd feel. But you don't know when you're in the moment if you're looking at something, and you go, I got to take a picture of this, you know, and just pull out your cell phone. After the fact, yeah, you look at a witness and go, you idiot, why didn't you just take a photo, you know? I mean, you just want to strangle them. But in the moment, if you're truly looking at something so extraordinary, that cell phone or that picture may not necessarily be the first thing on your mind. And, you know, I mean, I'm going to be, you know, a little bit cheesy here for a moment. Sure. And I think that sometimes, you know, people should enjoy what they're seeing a little bit more in front of them and not worry about, you know, taking a photo or video. Don't necessarily feel that about the UFO phenomena. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people just spend too much time on their phones anyway. If I saw a UFO, I don't know if my first inclination would be to pull out a phone, you know, and snap a picture or snap a video. I hope it would be. That way people would believe me. But again, in the moment, it's really hard to say. I mean, if you're so struck by something that is so extraordinary, taking that video evidence may not be the first thing on your mind.
You know, we were speaking about the U.S. government and the Canadian government, and it was just not that long ago that the Canadian government has totally disbanded anything to do with UFOs. Any UFO report that comes in is now referred to Chris Rutowski. Yeah,
and that seems kind of indicative to what, you know, the U.S. government has done in some of their, you know, public letters and form letter responses. They forward somebody to, you know, Peter Davenport at the UFO Reporting Center. But what was very interesting, to go back to the story before your break there, the Canadian government was the one that really proved the American lie about the UFO phenomena. And they gave me a stack of pages, UFO related, from the 2000s, the early 2000s, that proved that NORAD was lying to me, that they didn't collect any UFO records. So since the early 2000s, yeah, they may have, you know, ultimately shut off collecting UFO reports. But I would also argue that maybe that's just what they want you to believe. If you look at the American government, that's what they want you to believe also, that they don't care. But in reality, you look at these documents, it shows the opposite. So Canada's a government I haven't tackled much. I did get the UFO records, you know, through the Department of National Defense up there. But I haven't really tackled them as a whole to really kind of target in like I have the U.S. government. So maybe there's more to the story. I don't know, you know, how your Access to Information Act works. I know it's equivalent to our FOIA, but, you know, I'm wondering how many individuals and researchers up there are really engaging all the different agencies and going after, you know, documents relating to it. Because if it's anything like the American government, what they say is definitely quite the opposite of what they actually do.
We've had Paul Hellyer on the show, the former Minister of Defense and Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, who's now into the UFO community as a speaker and so on and so forth. On the show, I point blank asked him, as Minister of Defense for Canada, had he ever seen or heard of a UFO being sighted over Canada, or a report that had crossed his desk, or the members of his staff in Ottawa, and he blatantly said no.
Okay. But he's a big believer, right? I mean, I know his backstory. Oh, yeah,
he is now, because he's making money at it, because he can't make any more money in politics, and he uses the UFO community as a catapult to, you know, to sell books. But when it comes, he's never seen a UFO. All his experience comes from reading books. You know, so
yeah, I've met him a couple times, and I mean, I don't want to trash anybody who's in the field, but I mean, I wouldn't say I was overly impressed with what I heard. It doesn't hurt to have somebody of that former rank and holder of an office to come out and kind of support the field as a whole. But if there's that lack of evidence, that doesn't help the case at all, because that is the type of person that will get into the limelight. That if, let's say, a major media outlet wants to cover the field and they go after somebody like him who's prominent, but again, there's no evidence to ultimately back up what the claims are, that doesn't help. And I think that's, doing more harm to the field than good if we're out there saying something, but we can't back it up. Similar to your comment about Malaysia Airlines.
Right.
You can say it, and that's great, but if you're not backing it up, people are just going to laugh at you. If and when you ever do get real evidence, nobody's going to take you seriously.
Based on the research that you've done, John, and the documents that you've been able to decipher from under the Freedom of Information Act, do you believe that these UFOs, if they are from other planets or other universes or wherever, pose a threat to the safety of this planet and the occupants of the planet?
Well, using the government documents as an example, whatever that UFO connection is, if it is alien, it is a threat to national security, because that's why they say they won't tell us about it. Away from the government documents, do they pose a threat? I look at it kind of on a smaller scale. I compare it to the people of Earth. And not everybody on Earth lives in harmony, as
True.
we very well know.
Yep.
There's a lot of different countries out there. Some are very peaceful, some are very simple, some are very complex, some are very aggressive, and some just don't care. And I think that when you look at it that scale, on a galactic scale, you would have pretty much the same thing. You're going to have peaceful civilizations out there. You're going to have aggressive ones. You're going to have ones that are more simple. I think that we have to look at it that way, and we have to really come to that conclusion that they could be a threat. Are they? Well, I'm not sure if I can answer that definitively, but I think that if there is one civilization out there, then there are millions of civilizations out there, and there are millions of them that are more advanced than us. And if that is the case, then you're going to have all of the above out there that could potentially come here. And as we all know, in the 16th, the 15th, the 17th century, as explorers branched farther and farther out from their homeland, it didn't fare well for the other side in most cases. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that we have to look at our own history to understand on a cosmic scale what could potentially happen to us as humans here on Earth in the future, if it isn't happening already. And this kind of leads into one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is the kind of the SETI protocols, the reaching out to the cosmos, sending out these signals saying, here we are, this is what we are, this is where we are, this is how you can get here, and ultimately this is how inadvanced we are. This is how bad our technology is. And I think that an alien race, should they be aggressive, pick up that signal, that's not going to be good for us. And I think we got to really start thinking about, when we're sending out these messages, who are we sending it to? And that's a big debate in my mind that we just don't know. We have this thirst to the humanity itself and scientists have this thirst to figure out if we are not alone or not, because most of them, are not decided yet. We haven't found that scientific evidence to show we're not alone in the universe. And so they have that thirst to figure it out. So they're just blindly sending up these signals, not knowing where or whom they are going to. And I think that potentially is a really big problem.
I've had Seth Shostak on the show a number of times over the years, and one of my questions to him is, how do you know that the signals you're sending out can actually be understood by anyone else but humans?
Mm-hmm.
And you never get a straight answer.
Because they can't answer it. And I've met Dr. Shostak quite a few times. I've interviewed him for various Discovery and History Channel shows that I've produced and written. And I'll preface this by saying he is an incredibly intelligent, incredibly nice guy who's very passionate about his work. And he's clear, concise, and knows how to speak plain English, explaining complicated things. But when it comes to, addressing those points, I would say about SETI as a whole, they can't answer that because they're not even decided if alien life is out there yet. So they can't, based on that fact, they can't then start assuming whether or not they're going to understand math or science or plain English or Japanese or Chinese or, whatever they are sending up into the cosmos. I think that they've concluded that, mathematics is possibly a universal language, but that's based on a three-dimensional, 20th, now 21st century science.
Exactly.
So, that kind of doesn't really make sense. And when it comes to alien intelligence and it comes to alien life, really anything goes. As much as we want to truly fathom what is out there, we are so infantile in where we are in the cosmos and again, that cosmic scale, we can't figure it out. We don't know. They might be laughing at us. And I laugh at those that talk about aliens coming here to save us from our own nuclear weapons, because our, nuclear weapons, should we not destroy ourselves, will be a threat to the cosmos. In my opinion, that is so laughable because if they can travel from there to here, a nuclear weapon is absolutely nothing. If you look at the nuclear weapon capability of today versus what we dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, my point here is that what was big then is nothing now. And look at that's only, however many years from 1945 to now, you're not talking about a long stretch there. And look how much technology has changed. That's my point. If you're now talking about 21st century Earth technology and Earth science, yeah, it is amazing how different it is from 18th century science. But if you're talking about a civilization that had a 1,000,000-year head start on us, do you really think that they're going to care about a 500 megaton bomb? I don't think that that's even going to scratch anything that they've got. And so for us to be so egotistical to think, well, they're going to come here and save us and bring us to that spiritual next level, I just don't see that happening. I mean, I think when you deal with intelligent life, if they are out there, I'll say it again, if they're out there, if one of them is out there, then there's millions out there. And if there's millions out there, do you really think they're going to care about us? And that's the biggest question I can't answer. I believe the UFO phenomena is real. I believe that there's a huge possibility it's connected to extraterrestrials, but I just can't find the connection on why they would care to come here or attempt to communicate with us.
John, stand by. We've got to take our final break for this hour. John Greenwald is our special guest, Exonation, www.theblackvault.com. John and I return to wrap up this hour here in the X Zone on the other side of this break from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation John Greenwald is our guest. He is the gentleman behind the Black Vault, www.theblackvault.com. John, I understand that you found some newer documents pertaining to the U.S. Forest Service. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to discover this. I mean, as soon as I think I'm kind of tapped out on all the different government agencies I go after, I had filed a FOIA request to the U.S. Forest Service, which is the agency that pretty much oversees all of our national forests and national parks here in America. And to my surprise, when I asked for UFO documents, got a stack of information. And it started with something pretty rare. It started with a bunch of digital full-color photographs of a UFO that were taken just a few years ago. I think that I can deduce that it was maybe a civilian, not a park employee or, a non-government witness to this UFO, but the name is blacked out, so I can't really determine that. And they sent in pictures of a UFO that was seen in this national forest that they couldn't identify. And the Forest Service took the report and obviously, took it to the point of archiving it, which shows that they have a little bit of interest in the field. I mean, they took these photographs. You can't explain what's in the sky. I wouldn't say it's the smoking gun proof, but it shows that the Forest Service obviously does have somewhat of an interest to collect and archive these UFO photographs that were sent in. Also in the stack of pages that came out was some historical stuff about some of the national parks, even going back to the Project Blue Book era. But one of the other very interesting points was about a forest fire. And this forest fire was about 2013, I believe, 2012. And the reason why these documents came up under my request, because I was kind of scratching my head, why do these connect to a UFO, request under the FOIA, that apparently it was determined the source of this fire. They were talking about an unidentified object that had come down from the sky, crashed in the forest, and ultimately started this what became a very large forest fire. And so that was the connection to UFOs. Now, publicly, they said that it was potentially space debris or something like that came down. But again, it shows that internally, behind the scenes, they're talking about UFOs, potentially crashing in a national forest and being the source of a fire. So again, not a smoking gun, but very interesting find, especially since the material is from the last few years.
We've talked briefly about nuclear power before, John, but is there a connection between the UFO phenomena and the nuclear installations on planet Earth?
There seems to be. There's quite a few government documents out there, most famously probably Malmstrom Air Force Base, that UFOs are seen over nuclear missile silos and nuclear power stations. And there seems to be some kind of connection between these UFO sightings and nuclear power. Now, why they would care, I believe that, if you were to ask me that, I think that that's a whole different show in itself. I don't believe that they would care, but it seems to be that there is a connection there because there are so many cases, behind these nuclear power plants and nuclear missile silos. So thinking that, in the last year, I filed a FOIA request to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The NRC is, again, that agency that overlooks many of these nuclear installations. And I was surprised to see that they also had a stack of UFO files I'd never found before, and I got them declassified, and one of which was a base security officer for the Cooper Nuclear Station. I believe that's in Nebraska. And the Cooper Nuclear Station, this base security guard had gone outside. He saw this triangle-shaped UFO over the base in restricted airspace. He found one of his fellow security guards to come out, take a look. And after a couple minutes, this thing took off, and there it went. So they go in and they tell the other security guards that were on duty, and they all laughed at him. They said that, these two guys were out there drinking too much or, doing something else, and they were laughed at. Well, the next night, according to this report, the UFO actually came back. And those guys that laughed at him, they went in and got him, pulled him out, and sure enough, they said by this report, there was over a dozen witnesses to this UFO sighting. I checked around. This particular case had never been discovered before. And digging a little bit deeper, the security guard didn't report it because he was fearful for his job. And it actually took him about 20-plus years to contact the NRC after he retired and said, I believe that I should make note of this. And the NRC took the report, forwarded it to the present-day staff of the Cooper nuclear installation, and they said, do not disseminate this, only give it to those with a need-to-know basis, which means that they took it seriously, and it was a classified situation, whatever it was. They never identified the object. They couldn't identify it, but it was something that they took very seriously.
Do you think disclosure will happen in the near future?
It's a great question, and I'll probably be shunned for saying it, but no. I think that the U.S. government probably, if they do consider it, I don't think that they ever would. I mean, I think the UFO community is its own enemy. I think that it, is not making itself look good. So if the government kind of gets into the fray and tries to say, yes, UFOs are real, it's connected to aliens and so on, America would become a laughingstock, just the way the aura has kind of formed around this field over the last few years. So not to be negative Nancy about it, if disclosure by the sense of the U.S. government or a world government coming out, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the repercussions from the public would be too grand for them to consider it. And I think that your listeners, myself, we could handle it okay. But I use the Heaven's Gate cult as a grim reminder that there's a lot out there that a lot of people out there that they wouldn't take this type of announcement well. And I'm not saying everybody would go and off themselves with such an announcement, but I think you would see a lot of those types of groups and those sects.
John, are you there? John, are you with us still? Exonation, I don't know what happened to our guest this hour, John Greenwald. It seems that we've lost the link to John. But just to give you a roundup, we've been talking to John Greenwald. He is the gentleman who...
Start looking up and asking him.
Well, welcome back. We lost you for about 30 seconds. John, you there? We've lost John again. Craig, do we have John back? I have no idea what's going on there, my friend. So why don't we do this, Craig? We've lost John officially now, so we'll get John back on another day and another time, and we'll just have to keep pursuing this matter. So tell me, Exonation, do you believe that there is a UFO conspiracy? Do you think that the governments of the world are perpetrating a massive cover-up? And if so, why? If we can't get along for political reasons now, how could all the governments of the world hide, suppress all this information that is apparently out there? John Greenwald, he's the gentleman behind The Black Vault. His website is www.theblackvault.com. He says that he has over 1.3 million pieces of information that he has obtained from the Freedom of Information Act. This man is serious about what he does. And I've had the pleasure of listening to John on A Different Perspective with Kevin Randall. And you know what? This gentleman knows how to do his homework. So we're going to get John Greenwald back in the very near future. And once again, his website is www.theblackvault.com. Now, before we end this segment, I'd like to remind everyone that we have a petition to have Jan Harzan, the executive director of MUFON, forcing him to resign as the executive director of MUFON. In May 2017, the MUFON state director for both Pennsylvania and Delaware and the Inner Circle member, John Ventry, posted what can only be called a racist rant to his private Facebook page. Several people reacted to it, suggesting that such opinions were appalling. MUFON's executive director and Inner Circle member, Jan Harzan, reacted with what was called a non-apology, attacking those who had reacted negatively, calling them haters, and then suggested that these haters might be worse than John Ventry. The offensive posts, as well as the critical comments, were then removed. Harzan eventually announced that John Ventry had been fired as state director for both states. The reaction came only after there had been more bad public relations for MUFON. Not long after this, it was discovered that another Inner Circle member, J.Z. Knight, had, in a drunken rant, made other racially charged comments about the Jews, Mexicans, gays, Catholics, and organic farmers. Harzan, on learning this, ignored the severity of the comments, saying that if she had been a state director, he would have fired her. All three remain on the Inner Circle, and while it is suggested that the Inner Circle has no real influence over the MUFON workings, other documentation, including the MUFON website, suggests otherwise. Now, given the slow reaction to Ventry's racist rant and the lack of real concern about such attitudes at the highest levels of MUFON's organization, as evidenced by Harzan's public comments about both Ventry and Knight, it is time to remove these high-ranking MUFON officials from their positions of power and oversight. The problem is systemic at the top, and such attitudes can filter down through the organization. Rather than standing by and watching what happens, it is time to make a change. Now, if you agree, go to www.xzbnradiotv.com. Sign the petition. It's there. And you can also read the ridiculous claims that John Ventry made going back to 2014 that Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 will never be found because it was abducted by extraterrestrials. I'll be back on the other side of this break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.